Welcome to this presentation on the evaluation of head office overhead claims in construction projects. When projects fall behind schedule or hit with delays, co-vendors or contractors often complain that their core or central operating cost is still running without being absorbed by project's revenues. This leads to claims in an attempt to recover overheads in respect of time-related impacts. This session will include an introduction to two recognized approaches on how they work and some of the reasons they underpin or for underpin fairness in practice. In this article, we will utilize common sense examples to demonstrate how claims unfold, as well as analyze how industry is moving towards methods that have stronger evidential justification. Finally, we would like to consider how a hybrid approach might allow for better transparency, accuracy, and dispute avoidance. Slide 3, understanding head office overheads and claims context. This slide helps explain what the head office overheads are really, because it is important that they are valued correctly, and to do that it is important to know what they are. Unlike direct project cost, these expenses lie outside the site and pertain to maintain the wider operation. When a project is proceeding in a normal way, the contract sum contributes in the absorption of such central expenses. But when projects run behind the schedule or get disrupted, their stops or reduced their contribution, leaving a hole. This is where contractors claim that they have experienced it financially and try to get compensated for their losses. The issue is with these costs is that they cannot directly assign it to a single specific job, which is why clients dispute whether the loss is actually theirs. The disagreements has in the past led to the use of formula which try to allocate overheads in proportion. However, despite the use of formula, there remain disputes as to fairness, evidence, and concession. As we proceed, we shall examine the two leading approaches to formula and see how each attempt to cope with the difficulties. Slide 4 overview, Hudson formula. This slide introduces the Hudson formula, which was historically popular because it provided an apparent simple method of estimating the missing overhead losses. The underlying idea is that a contractor encompasses overheads and profit as part of their tender, and therefore it is a project that runs longer than expected than the overhead element requires an extension. On the surface, the method makes varying appear to be easy. You take percentage for overheads and profit that were used to the original tender and apply them proportionally in the extended period. Because of this simplicity, it is reportedly mentioned in the construction claims. However, this convenience is also weakness. It also is weakness. Tender allowances are strategic and commercial rather than necessarily representative of actual corporate expenditure. If a tender was high or for low competitive reasons, the mechanical application of that percentage may distort the financial impact of the delay. Modern dispute environment are trending towards transparent and evidence-based reasoning. This means that while Hudson is famous, it is now a method that needs further proof. Therefore, its advantages and disadvantages are important to know when considering whether utilizing its professional practice. Slide 5. Slide 5. Overview of Imeden formula. The Imeden formula was developed because of the industry professionals began to question whether Hudson really reflected financial reality. Instead of looking at the tender percentage, Imeden seeks to the company's accounts to figure out what overheads actual cost for a given period. This approach is appealing because it appears much more based on the real data and is far less speculative. If a contractor can prevent their audited accounts and link their overhead structure to the operating profile of the organization, then the use of compensation is easy explained. So this is friend. However, using Emeden is not easy. It's not always easy. It assumes that the financial records are sufficiently detailed to allow clear, causal links to be drawn between delay, cost extension, and implications for it. Slide 6. Comparative analysis Hudson versus Emeden. This slide illustrates several key differences between the Hudson and Emeden formula to develop analytical understanding before applying them to some practical examples. Hudson is often applied because it is familiar and easy to calculate, especially when accounting records are not sufficiently maintained. However, it is also its biggest weakness because it derives directly from the tender percentage. It does not automatically reflect reality. Tenders may be commercially priced strategic reasons. Emeden responds to this issue by using historical financial information which has more credibility, but this approach assumes that a contractor has reliable accounting systems which indicate how much money is spent on central operations and its expenditure in relation to the revenue. For smaller firms or for those who do not have detailed reporting systems, this may be practical. Slide 7. Practical applications. Hudson formula under contract context. This is the uses of Hudson formula in a real-life situation to ensure that how it is normally applied. Imagine a contractor is delayed because later design changes are introduced by the client. Since the delay is not under their control, they seek a claim for absorbed head office overheads under the relevant provision of the contract. Hudson offers a straightforward method for valuing this loss. It begins by applying the overhead and profit percentage allowed in the original tender to the contractor sum. In this example, a contract worth 5 million with an 8% allowance produced £400,000 attributes to overhead and profit. Dividing this by planned 100-week program results in a weekly amount of £4,000. When multiplied by 10-week delay, the total claim reaches £40,000. The simply slide 8 practical example, Emeden formula contract. This slide uses the Emeden formula in a practical exercise to show that the reason why it is often considered more of credible than Hudson is an example of contractor has several projects that are running at the same time. When one of these has a delay of 10 weeks, the organization loses its ability to absorb head office overheads in its original planned revenue streams. Under Emeden, the contractor must refer to the financial records to justify the loss. And slide 9. Proposed hybrid method overhead evaluation. This slide presents a better approach to the varying head office overheads based on lessons learned from both Hudson and Emeden. Rather than replacing either, the proposal combines strength and offsetting the weakness of both. First, the tender-based allowance offers a starting point of information on the commercial assumption made when the contract was formed. Second, the audited accounts verify the organization really spends overheads, which can be used to validate valuation using overhead, not just assumption. Slide 10, conclusion and key findings. This slide summarizes the key messages from the presentation. We have discussed the images of Hudson and Emeden to assist with the qualification of unabsorbed head office overhead caused by delay or disruption. Each of these have value, but none alone provides a fully reliable result in today's professional climate. Hudson itself simple to supply and familiar with the basing of the tender pricing undermine its credibility when it is subject to scrutiny. Meanwhile, Evident provides more evident ground, but where there are good accounting systems and higher administrative burden. Thank you very much for listening.